Ministering Angels by Lori A. Thompson. Chapter 18. Water Travels. Aiden is walking along the beach. It is a warm afternoon. He looks out over the water. The ocean has a thick layer of ice over it. He thinks about how strange it is that he is so warm and yet surrounded by pure ice. He finds nothing unusual about not seeing any waves rush up and crash against the shoreline. It is the stillness he finds disconcerting. He walks over to the tree line and finds a large piece of bark loose on the ground. A fallen tree has lost most of its outer layer over time. Aiden goes back to the edge of the ocean where the ice touches the warm sandy beach. He tips the bark, wedging one edge in the sand, while he holds the other end in the air with his hand. He puts his left foot in the center curve of the bark. Aiden only has to wait a moment, and he can feel movement in the air, catching it like a wave. He settles his back foot on the bark, still holding on to the front tip of it with his left hand. He moves into the air a couple of feet above the ice. Then he raises himself up a couple 100 feet in the air. He keeps his eyes focused on the ice, fascinated with the clarity he's able to view the happenings in the ocean through the crystal clear ice. Aiden watches schools of fish, plants, and coral pass him by as he moves out deeper over the ocean, down to a dark section of water. At first he wonders if he's looking at the water hole, except covered with ice. As he gets closer, he lowers himself down just inches above the ice. He's so close, he could touch it if he wanted. He leans in to get a better view. Aiden sees himself on a gigantic monster. The rush of the water is felt over his skin. Aiden is on his animal, slowly coming to. He looks up towards the ocean's surface to see the ice he viewed from above. His body shifts from a heavy weight, slowly waking to a lighter self. There is no ice above him, but he can't shake the sensation of being closed in. He regains his hold of the animal's harness. Aiden is letting the deep overcome him. He looks around, seeing all the large animals surround him. He decides to return to the surface. He has directed these animals many times, but he's never experienced what seems innate, how they lost themselves in the migration. He knows it would take more than yanking on this harness to divert its attention. Aiden tries to remember back to his training with the animal. He outstretches his hand and taps a rhythm on one side and then the next. Then he taps his heel in the same way. The tapping pattern is part of his old efforts to teach the animal to turn on command. The animal doesn't budge. He yanks back on the harness, but just as he feared, the animal doesn't respond. Aiden is out of ideas. He keeps trying to think of things he's done before, and nothing seems to be working. He starts looking around in the water, hoping something will offer him an idea. He even starts thinking of other animals he has trained. He decides he's going to the surface, and he knows he just has to get the animal's attention. Panning right to left, Aiden really doesn't know what he's searching for. He just keeps searching. Then out of the corner of his eye, he sees a hump on one of the monsters. It catches his attention, and then he looks once again. He waits a bit as it slowly comes into better view. It's Joshua. Joshua has his head turned the opposite direction. Aiden hasn't seen him the entire time they've been in the deep. It is so good to see him. He tests out different methods to try to get his attention. He tries to make a call or a click with his mouth, but the water's rushing in and out, restricting his efforts. He stays with his idea, trying to force out the water. Then he attempts a click once more. He does this over and over, thinking that making a sound is the only way to get Joshua's attention. His desire to get his attention increases as Joshua seems so close. In Aiden's moment of frustration, he puts his head face down on the animal's back and moans to release the built-up tension in his chest. The noise rolls out of him, deep and loud. Aiden opens his eyes and reasons, "Was that me?" His chin rests on the animal's back, While his eyes are looking forward, he tests out his releasing sigh again. He forces out the soothing drone sound from deep within him. Freaked a bit, but strangely excited to have discovered a useful underwater tool, Aiden continues to force the noise out. The more he focuses, the louder it gets, pulsating through his entire body. Aiden continues his efforts again and again. He can feel his throat vibrate, making a rhythmic, deep wave of sound, which penetrates the space between him and Josh. Aiden can see Joshua move his body. Soon he sees Josh begin to turn his direction. Aiden figures the vibrato is successful, so he keeps repeating the sound, time after time, getting louder with each conscious effort, letting it slowly roll out and rumble through their underwater space. Finally, Joshua sees Aiden come into view. Josh smiles big. He's so happy to see his friend. Aiden's excitement reflects in his last call to his friend as a deep clicking sound comes out from his belly. Without warning, Aiden feels the animal's tail wag. He seizes the moment and tugs on the harness with all the strength he can muster up. He lets himself rise up, allowing the water to flow against his chest, creating greater resistance. This force is almost too much for him as his body is lifted off the animal. The animal responds by pointing its nose to the surface, kicks its tail, and shoots up through the force, up and out into the air. The other two trained animals follow. One by one, they leave the force, flying into the air, then back into the water. The animal seems to enjoy the release as much as the boys do. Aiden lets the animals play about the surface and then brings them to a halt. The animals gravitated towards each other, floating above the force as a group. The boys are adjusting to breathing the air in and out of their lungs. Brad takes a bit longer, coughing continuously until huge gasps of air replace the water completely. The boys sit in silence, and then Aiden, overwhelmed with a feeling of success, clicks, calls, and yells. The other two join in, releasing the excitement that has built up within them. They fall silent, and Brad looks around. He's looking for anything, a bird or something floating in the water. "How long have we been under there, do you think?" Brad asked the boys, completely perplexed. Neither of them answers, for they are both consumed by the thought of how strange the experience was, but also considering how quickly they had adapted. "I'm starving, Joshua." Aiden grabs his pack off his back, and the others don't hesitate to grab their own. Planning for food was the trickiest part of their preparation for the great adventure. Brad's final decision was to travel until they had no more supplies, and then they would let the animals bring them back. The return trip would be the most difficult part of the trip, but if they found land, they would surely last longer. It was a risk they were all willing to take. The cook packed food that is dense and small to eat along the way. He also packed a route for their return trip home to help control their appetite and sustain their mental endurance. It has been used effectively during long hunts. All the boys take their time munching on dried beef, still dazed from the unexplainable happenings. As Josh reviews his underwater travel, he looks at Aiden and says, "That noise, that rumbling. I couldn't tell where it was coming from. Did either of you hear that?" Brad joins in the conversation, also unsure of its source. "I'm not sure what direction it came from." Aiden hesitated to share. He's still amazed by it himself. "Well, guys, it was me." Brad and Josh look at each other and burst out laughing. The more Josh thought of it, the more he laughed. The more Josh laughed, the more Brad laughed. The craziness of the happenings roll through their minds. It releases through their uncontrollable laughter. Aiden is unsure of the humor behind the laughter. He sat uncomfortably, gnawing on his beef. Joshua wipes his tears from laughing. Brad holds his stomach, breathing deep as he recovers. Aiden speaks up to divert the focus. "We should be going." Without hesitation, the boys shake their heads in agreement. They reposition their packs on their backs and then hook their hands and feet in preparation to descend once again. Joshua is the most excited to get back to work. He loves the feeling of freedom. With each discovery they make, he responds with even more curiosity. His desire to know more increases as each new discovery unfolds. Traveling with Brad initiates a sense of belonging with the leaders. Brad is definitely more confident than he was when they began the journey. Brad permits the other boys to teach and lead him. He trusts their knowledge and skills. He respects their decision of sacrifice. But not even Brad knows the grave choice that they made the day they dove into the force. Aiden is proud of his animal skills, but acknowledges how he draws strength from Brad in order to face the unknown. Brad has a way of bringing peace and comfort to crisis situations. Aiden often thought back to when he found Malachi in the water. Brad kept the boys focused and on task. He knew how to redirect their fear, allowing them to feel safe and comforted. Aiden admires how Brad kept himself together during such trying situations. Now venturing off to who knows where, for who knows how long, Brad makes Aiden feel safe. Aiden believes Brad will lead them somewhere. At the very least, he believes they will all get back to the island safely. Aiden looks at the sun as it is setting. The boys back at the island will be starting the preparation fire. That's why we're out here, he states in his mind. Aiden hollers and clicks just as they would have back at the island to gather up the boys. Joshua and Brad look at each other and smile, then join in on the calls. Aiden tugs on the harness as if he's giving the animal permission to enjoy itself on the water. This time, they take only one dive, then one by one they return to the deep. Each animal obediently follows behind the other until they are settled into the rhythm of their journey once more. Aiden is pleased to see that the other boys have found a resting place on the backs of the animals next to him. Brad has adjusted to the water moving in and out of his lungs with greater ease this second time. He is determined to stay awake longer this time. Brad feels a renewed determination for his quest for truth. End of chapter 18.